Hey, this is More Than Velocity. I'm Bart Pear here with Ryan Croton and Jordan Osagara. And today we've got Erik Wagle with KPI, Kinetic Performance Institute. And we're actually going to talk about real players, real data, real decisions, and how you actually improve performance. I'm excited about today. Erik, first of all, welcome. Why don't you give people a brief introduction to KPI and then we'll get right into it.
I appreciate you guys having me on. KPI is a baseball, softball performance facility in the Bay Area, kind of the southern tip of Silicon Valley, just south of San Jose. We actually have two locations now. They're about 100 yards away, so they do exist as two different locations. Our original location, we're running softball, youth baseball, and our physical therapy clinic out of. The new fancy shiny place is high school, college, pro baseball only. Um, Train at any given time about 400 athletes or so, 350 kind of it's a little seasonal obviously, but train quite a few baseball players, all high tech, high performance stuff. We have pretty much every bell and whistle you could think of. But our favorite piece of tech is what we're going to talk about today. It's a little ArmCare sensor. So we use that every day with our pitchers. Kind of what makes us unique too, and I'm sure we'll get into it, is we kind of cross over to the team space, and we have quite a few travel teams under our umbrella, some high school teams and junior college teams, and even Division I teams that use our system. So, what we're doing now with the ArmCare sensors is really monitoring things not only in the facility but when they're performing on the field. And we have some pretty cool crossovers and projects that we're working on that side of the spectrum.
Very, very cool. So, before we get into an actual player, how long have you been using ArmCare?
We're about 2 full years now, and maybe even a little bit over 2 full years where we've kind of been with you guys and have loved the partnership. We were actually trying to do something like this on our own, right? We had it in our brain that like, hey, like this is what we want to do, and then I'm not exactly sure how it got going, but basically there were some conversations that took place with Jordan and Ryan and myself and my business partner Dan, who I know has been on here, and then it was just like, hey, like you guys are light years ahead of us on doing this with the software and the product. Like, let's just combine forces and do this partnership. So we love it. You guys have been extraordinarily generous and just really trying to like help us, deliver this product to our athletes. And really, it's we're probably high maintenance for you guys, but you guys just kind of basically just being like, hey, like let's do this, and like let's spread the good word on how to objectify arm care. Even to the point with Matt kind of hopping on the stage with us at ABCA in the Expo Theater, like and just all the helping us with profiles and helping us with product and how to use it at the beginning. Like it's been pretty awesome.
Very cool. Well, let's get right into it. So, set up the first player we want to talk about.
The big one is Quinn Larson. He's at Cal now. He's a sophomore there. Quinn is a pretty extraordinary story for a whole bunch of different reasons, but the crossover with the arm care sensor kind of really is the hub of this. Quinn wasn't the superstar player early in high school. The big time travel ball kid, the early commit. We've gotten rid of some of the early commits now with this new rule, but he wasn't the kid that was going to commit to a Power Five school early, or I guess Power Four now. But he was kind of just the grinder type. We think we're pretty good at identifying young arms and how good they're going to be down the road with our approach with our force plates and the arm care sensors and stuff like that. Quinn, we didn't see coming. He was just kind of a tall, lanky kid that showed up every day and worked out. And his junior year in the spring of his high school season, later on in the year started to complain. And he was high 80s, so he's pretty good. He had kind of worked his way up to that. Nothing crazy, but pretty good. Was getting some mid-major love from colleges. Started to complain to me about some forearm soreness. That was kind of lingering. We put in our normal like low-level interventions to help him. Then it kind of started to stay there for a while. Pulled his arm care scores and really, really saw his grip strength going down pretty dramatically, like over 20%. Pulled his force plate data and really saw that his force plate, basically the tension in his body had gone down quite a bit. And so we're like, hey, like he's about to get hurt. Like that was my thought. It's like this kid's about to blow out. And so we made a very controversial decision to shut him down. And I remember writing this very long email to his high school coach explaining our thought process for shutting him. And his parents are incredible. He had been with us since he was 11 years old. Like there was a ton of trust built up there. And his high school coach was like, well, but he's not hurt. And I'm like, we think he's about to get hurt, and like everything's telling us he's about to blow out. And there was, and he's a local kid, so like there's a lot of relationships built up in the community, and some people weren't happy about this. And so he basically shut down all summer, and that was also controversial because he was in his recruiting phase, like that was when he was supposed to get seen. And so we started to bring him back up, late July into August in preparation for him to get back out in the fall, to try to get committed. And did the 6 week shutdown, did the ramp up for the fall, got him out there in early September in a tournament in Arizona. And PG tweets him, he's throwing 95. And I'm not there. And I'm like, what? Like what's he doing? And so and we'd use your guys' ArmCare sensors in the software all along to kind of monitor his progress, make sure he was strong enough. And then of course, once that happens and you get kind of Twitter famous, everyone starts calling and texting this and that. And so like within a week he was committed to Cal, which was his dream school. That's exactly where he wanted to go because he's a high academic kid. He wanted to stay close to home. So it was kind of like the dream scenario, of how this all went down. And probably a pretty good testament to you guys as far as like, hey, this is why we're getting our product out there so we can do this particular case,
Yeah, so you saw the check engine light, you made the adjustments,
Yep, yep.
and obviously you're seeing things go well. And I think a good thing to point out there is even people that are just driving a car, when the check engine light comes on and you just drive through it, you shouldn't be shocked when the engine blows up. It's worth it to take that time, get it into the mechanic, see what's going on, and it's no different with the arm. Like things are going to have ups and downs, peaks and valleys. And when the check engine light comes on, you need to bring it to a mechanic. And if you have a coach that you're working with, anyone over at KPI or wherever it may be, that mechanic can look at you and say, yeah, we need to shut you down for 6 weeks. Or, you know what, this is just a 72-hour deload. Let's rotate the tires, change the oil, and get you back out there. But some rebuilds need to be a little bit bigger. Some of them are just a quick tune-up. So I think it's pretty cool that you're using the data along with what you already have to really maximize what direction to take with those athletes.
I think one of the things too is like to make it simple, it's about understanding what the snivels are before it's full-blown pneumonia. You see, like along the timeline, there could be coaches, that are a little, could be hesitant. The player is always ultra highly motivated. That's the problem is they will want to, throw through pain. We have athletes first week, of campus, they're freshmen, their arms cranky, they don't care. Like first bullpen, they want the coach to like them. Like there are all of these things that if you can sacrifice, I call it the pain of sacrifice early, right? Removing yourself, fixing things, then you avoid the pain of disappointment. But there is pain with every athlete. You got to make that choice, and it should be in favor, of your self-care, of your health and, of your performance, because at the end of the day, people don't really realize surgeries like a Tommy John, that's like 18 and a half months to come back, right? Very common. It's going on all the time. And the other thing is those don't last for more than 4 years, 4.5 years at best in an amateur. So, we have to get ahead of it. And that was the right move. You see something, you make sure that, there's a process that the athlete, when they come off, things are being, fixed and remediated, and the player buys in knowing that, hey, yeah, my coaches love me. They want to make sure that I'm healthy. And, the challenge I think comes from like what you're doing, Eric, and then all of a sudden they're in college. Now they have another stakeholder, and that stakeholder, I think that's a tough one to navigate because in the private industry, people really don't know what to do. They're like, hey, we got to educate the player as much as possible. And they might hit resistance when they go to the next spot or the next coach, maybe because the coach doesn't understand it. So the player's got to sit down and show it. And maybe because the coach, doesn't want to have to modify. They have their plan set, something they might have been using for years. They've always been successful with it. And that's a challenge, man.
No, for sure. I think that, exactly what you're talking about. Like let's say we didn't have the technology in this exact scenario. Like, as his private coach, I'm motivated for him to commit to a Division I school, right? Like that helps me. And his high school coach is motivated to win games and give those kids a good experience. But what the sensor did, and then our other pieces of tech, it basically took out that sentiment. Like we're going to remove the emotions from this equation and be like, hey, like everything that we study and everything that we know to be true is lining up a certain way here. Now, that doesn't mean he was for sure going to get hurt. It just means that we made an educated decision on what was happening, you know. It wasn't a 100% decision, you know, but the result turned into, you know, he was up to 98 by the end of that year, you know. So the result was desirable. Now, it doesn't always work perfectly like we're talking about, but like the point is to use objective information to make educated decisions. And then, you know, the dust settles where it settles from there. You just want to be on the right side of that more times than not.
So, I mean, not everybody has force plates. So were there any, you know, indicators performance wise or how he was feeling besides his forearm, anything else that was triggering, hey, there might be an issue here?
There was a slight dip in velo. You know, he was kind of getting down into the mid 80s a little bit. It probably wasn't enough. Like if you were only using a radar gun, it probably would have been like, it's late in the year. You know, he's dipping a little bit, you know, like not like kind of normal, not that big of a deal. And that's kind of the, you know, well, our jam, like our calling card is like connect the dots between all these different places and all these different pieces of tech to like paint a more accurate picture. So, but yeah, there was a little bit of outlier information that could have been used as well. And obviously his trust and belief to tell me the truth about how he was feeling. You know, like when the coach writes a lineup card, that's sometimes tough to be honest in that moment, you know. And then that's kind of where the private trainer can have a little bit more built up relationship on that side of things, where the player knows like, hey, this guy works for me, he doesn't necessarily work for my team.
So, yeah, you're getting into the mental aspect here. How was he with that decision? And obviously, it's one thing to make the decision, and now you're shut down for a period of time. You know, there could be a bit of a roller coaster mentally going on. I mean, what were you doing to keep him on track?
I mean, like I said, there was a very, very built up relationship there. So I do remember the initial conversation with him first. He was like, "Wait, what? What am I doing? I'm shut down." You know, like and then you know, same thing from the parents. But like he had been with us so long, and it was a very tight relationship that once I explained it, they were like, "Hey, we trust you." You know, and that's probably the subjective side of this process, right? Is having that kind of relationship to really, you know, be able to use the objective information properly, and people trust what you're saying. And then as he went through it, you know, he's a pretty diligent kid. Like you put a program in front of him, he's gonna do it to the 10 out of 10 extreme. So you know, the fluctuations of going through a little bit of a short rehab, shut down, then build up like that, he absolutely crushes that stuff. So that was pretty easy for him to do. And then, you know, once he started to ramp up and we saw the numbers, it was like, okay, we might have done something right here.
Fantastic, fantastic. And what I mean, you've got all these other players who are watching what's going on. What how are they reacting to this?
It's, you know, it's pretty cool, you know, especially with him, like I said, because he wasn't the superstar really. We have superstars, you know, at 15 years old and 16 years old that we know are going to be great, and it's our job to basically keep them healthy at that point in time, not necessarily develop them like we did Queen. But he was one of the really cool success stories, and I think people really took root of that. I mean,
I gotta jump in because this is important for people to know. You said something extremely important is that you had superstars at that age. And say it again, your job was to keep them healthy.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not reinventing them, right? And this is so important for people to realize is too often, and I had this joke, and Ryan will know what I'm talking about, is they're like, why do we sign these guys in pro ball and then we try to change them? And I would always just go like this. It's like, because someone wants to put their greasy thumbprint on them. When it comes down to it, if you have a superstar, just leave them alone and make sure you're keeping them on the lane. Put the bumpers up and make sure they're knocking down pins every outing. You're going to be okay, right? So if you can go a little more in depth on that, because I think that's important. I don't want to glaze over that.
Yeah, I mean, I say that all the time. I mean, you know, I don't even know if most is the right word. It might be the right word some years, but most of the really high level arms in the Bay Area train with us, you know? And so, you know, I tell people all the time when I sit down with the parents, you know, with a 15-year-old that's throwing 90 or whatever it is, and it's like, hey, like, we have a Ferrari with crappy tires, basically, that we need to like teach them to build up their tires properly so they can have some stability and some longevity. But this kid needs to be managed for the next 3 years until we get them to their college. This kid doesn't need to be, you know, I don't want to say not developed. Obviously, we're always going to work on things, but you know, we already have the base of something great. We don't need to do a ton of crazy velo work with him. Like he needs to learn the word to say no to travel teams, no to showcases, like no to all these extra events, no to playing baseball in November, you know? And so, you know, that's our philosophy. And then there are guys like Quinn, you know, that do pop up late that we kind of will jump in and kind of like take that. But like I mean, with our growth now, like I'm very little on the floor, and I'm more so on managing these high level arms because that's a full time job, and it needs to be done a specific way. And the numbers are the numbers as far as blowouts between 14 and 19 years old. Like we know them. And so I tell people all the time, like, hey, this is a weapon that could be dangerous if it's not used properly. This tall, skinny kid that throws 90, at 15, 16 years old. So that's really where you guys come in, and it's like we can objectify that side of things and really decide like, hey, like what does this kid need? He doesn't need us to do the same general programming as everyone else. He needs something a little bit different.
The thing I really like, in the private industry gets a little more complex when you start adding, schools or major league teams, because people get very channelized, is that, you can have a very full scale, highly agile approach. It's interesting, I go in to talk to schools or teams, I did a lot of that last year and we're doing a lot of it this year. You get people in the room and you realize how disconnected they are about the arm, right? Your medical staff is 100% on the back of the player. And then the strength staff is like 70% on the front of them.
Yep.
Lats, pressing. And I think, like where you are, they got to appoint a spearhead where it's like, hey, these different branches of training the athlete, whether it's pitching coaches or it's your medical staff or your strength coaches, somebody's got to connect all the dots, because what happens is they're going to be playing for the tie. There's so many times where I see someone reaches out to me, hey, my son's got this, we have the device, I can't change his ratio at all, it's actually going worse, and he's using the app. Well, one of the reasons is that the strength program is contradicting. And so that person, that player, doesn't have a spearhead. And that's the piece, I like hearing from you. And I think, other facilities, they got to understand, like, you got to be responsive. Someone's got to take hold and be like, hey, you got to show me everything you're doing with the player. This makes no sense. He's ER deficient. His imbalance is under 0.6. And, we have 8 pressing exercises. You got 2 rows in your program. Like, these things have to be dealt with, because, and this was something that was said to me, and I agree, from a GM that Jordan and I had. This: the best coaches make the greatest change the fastest. So, that's a part where I'm hearing this, and I think that's what you're doing, is you're just, hey, we are seeing the data and we are interacting right away, so that's good.
Yeah, 100%. And you nailed it. Like for high level arms, the process is so disconnected. I have my personal pitching guy, I have my strength guy, I have my travel ball coach, my high school coach, my soft tissue guy, my medical team, like all these people, my recruiting guy, like this guy over here, and that none of them like each other. They all think they're right. They don't connect. They get pissed off at each other. And it's like, man, that sucks for the player and the family. And so what Dan was actually the one that kind of, called it right when we opened. Basically, he was like, Erik, for what you do for these high level guys and how you connect the dots between all these different areas, he goes, that's actually a product we should have in our business, and we started this high level arms program, and it's just been an incredible success, because between kind of the scope of what we have in our umbrella, like we can break down a lot of those barriers. Not all of them, a lot of them though. We can break that down. And the sensor goes across all those things. When I have a guy out in Georgia playing for the travel team, and he's testing, and the coach calls me and says this, like, I can go right into the portal and see what's going on, and then I can talk to the kid like, hey, like, I just put something on your program to work on this over the next few days. Boom. Like, and again, it's not perfect, but it's way better than the normal system right now for high level guys, which is basically just try to survive this gauntlet of different philosophies that get thrown at them every day.
I think the key word there was, it's not perfect, right? Sorry, Bart, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, he was testing. I mean, that's one of the things that we get frustrated with, is you got to actually have a baseline of tests to see changes. If you don't establish this is the norm, you don't know when things are off. And so that's a key thing there. Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, I had, like you said, it's not perfect, but I had a player ask me today, he goes, is it too much if I test every day? Said, not necessarily. You're going to just see more granular changes, and you can actually probably get ahead of things a little sooner. But again, there's no such thing as perfect when it comes down to it. All you're looking to do is be a little bit more accurate than you were a week ago, a day ago, whatever it may be. But as that athlete changes, and like you're pointing out, these guys might grow. They might have a new weighted ball program thrown at them when they go to a new school. They may have, a high school coach that uses them a specific way, a travel coach that uses them a specific way. And the whole thing is ArmCare. I always look at it as like the sensor is like a really good multivitamin. It's filling in the gaps on the nutrition. So, I'm short on vitamin D. I need to add that in. I'm short on IR strength. I'm short on everything looks good. Let's add in rotational speed or, whatever you guys are working on, but you're able to use it like a very good supplement to fill in those gaps that are needed.
No, for sure. And then I agree completely. And then getting back to what Ryan was talking about with the strength training matching up with the throwing, like that's a huge challenge we have with the college guys, and we went through it last year a little bit with one of the local schools here is, the strength coach was crushing them with eccentrics as they were getting really ramped up with their throwing progressions, and it's like, well, like 4 or 5 of them went down in a 2-week period. They didn't blow out to surgery, but they had to basically get shut down for a little bit. And I told the coach, I said, hey, like, this is why, and so, we're starting to crack through at a few different levels here locally, with some of the high school and colleges, and just like, hey, like, if we work together on all these things, and with, especially with the ArmCare device, like, we can actually make a ton of progress and keep more guys healthy. It's not, again, not 100%, but we can keep more guys healthy this way.
Very cool. Eric, I really appreciate that. I don't know if you have another case study you want to talk about, or we could save it for another time. What do you think?
No one in necessarily particular. I mean, yeah, we plenty of examples along those lines. But I think just more so like how we use it across our umbrella and our kind of, we have fairly wide spectrum, is really cool for us, and it's really become the hub of our ArmCare system, is just to be able to monitor them. More and more colleges and high schools around here are kind of like wanting to be involved in it, so it helps us quite a bit just to kind of break down some of those barriers that we've been talking about.
Fantastic. Well, love to have you back another time to talk more players. But until then, thanks for coming on, and take care.